Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Gerstel. I'm director of the UCLA Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for the Study of Hellenic Culture. I'm so pleased to welcome you today to a virtual tour of the Museum of Cycladic Art, one of the most beautiful and innovative museums in Athens, if not in all of Greece. Founded in 1986 to house the collection of Nicholas and Dali Goulandris, the museum is dedicated to the study and promotion of ancient cultures of the Aegean and Cyprus, with special emphasis on Cycladic art of the 3rd millennium BC. Beyond the display of the museum's permanent collection, which includes 3,000 Cycladic, ancient Greek, and ancient Cypriot artifacts, the museum curates temporary exhibitions that focus on both archaeology and modern and contemporary art, and aim to connect the public not only to antiquity, but also to important 20th and 21st century artists. In addition to stunning exhibitions on such themes as beyond death and afterlife in ancient Greece, or Ieia, health, illness, treatment from Homer to Galen, the museum has hosted works by and exhibitions by Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, Louise Bourgeois, Ai Weiwei, Cy Twombly, Mike Kelly, George Condo, and many others. This broad reach is part of the museum's mission to connect the ancient and modern worlds in ways that inspire. It's an honor for us to host this virtual tour, which will bring you inside this beautiful museum, and I hope will encourage you to visit or even join as a member. And this tour continues our mission of connecting you to important museums and scholars in Greece, bridging a great divide created by distance, time zones, and now by current health concerns. Metaxia Routsi, our guide today, graduated from the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of Ioannina. From 1999 to 2004, she worked for the Greek Ministry of Culture as an archaeologist in the Ephorate of Antiquities of the Cyclades. She has worked in many excavations of prehistoric sites, including the Early Cycladic Cemetery at Chalandriani of Syros, the Neolithic settlement of Strofilas of Andros, the Mesolithic settlement at Maroulas on Kythnos. She has undertaken the study and publication of materials from an archaic cemetery excavated by Yanos Kouraios on Paros. From January 2019, she has been working as a guide in the Museum of Cycladic Art. You will have the opportunity to ask her questions following the tour. But for the moment, out of courtesy to both the speaker and to the many listeners who are with us today, please ensure that your microphones are on mute. Our young center, housed at UCLA, but with deep roots in Greece and Cyprus, is blessed to have an exceptional board of advisors whose members are drawn from Southern California, from the very broad community of Greeks here. Their commitment to connecting cultural institutions in Los Angeles and Greece inspires all of us. I'm very grateful to one of our board members, the exceptional Lilian Evgenidis Palidor, who first suggested today's event and who was instrumental in connecting us to the wonderful staff of the Museum of Cycladic Art. I would like to invite Lilian to say a few words about her connection to the museum and to introduce today's event. So sit back for a very special occasion. Good morning, Lilian. Just unmute yourself.
Everyone from all around the world, I would like to welcome you to the virtual tour of the Cycladic Museum. As a member of the advisory board of UCLA Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center of Hellenic Studies and a young patron of the Cycladic Museum, I feel proud that we managed to bridge two important organizations and their audiences. Being a young patron has given me the opportunity to attend exclusive events online and in person, connect with like-minded people, and at the same time support the Cycladic Museum and its Greek cultural community programs. I hope you enjoyed today's event, and thank you everyone for being here. And I would like to introduce Mrs. Cassandra Marinopoulou, President and CEO of the Museum of Cycladic Art.
I am Sandra Marinopoulos, President of the Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens. I want to welcome you to this virtual visit of our Cycladic collection. The presentation that will follow is an effort to make you feel you're actually walking through our Cycladic figurines while discovering the Cycladic civilization. I believe this is the way going forward now for museums who cannot welcome as many visitors as before. Despite the fact that the physical presence is most important, we have an opportunity today to enrich it not only with this type of virtual tours, but with curated online exhibitions, which is our next big project. It will be a phygital exhibition, meaning physical and digital. We hope you will visit us during this major archaeological exhibition, which is still confidential, either by coming to a museum in person or by visiting online. We promise to make sure we notify you. I want to thank UCLA for supporting these Cycladic virtual tours. A special thanks to Professor Sharon Gerstel, also to Lilian Polidor, our young patron who brought us in touch with UCLA, and to all our museum friends, to which we are so grateful for their support during these difficult times. I will now ask our archaeologist, Metaxia Routsi, to take you on this special Cycladic voyage through time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Marinopoulou. My name is Metaxia Routsi, and I'm a prehistoric archaeologist in Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens. For my part, I would like to thank Professor Sharon Gerstel and Lilian Polidor for supporting the Cycladic Museum, and of course, Stavros Niarchos Foundation, Center for the Study of Hellenic Culture. I would like to welcome you all to the Cycladic virtual tour of the Museum of Cycladic Art. Today, I will introduce you to the Cycladic civilization through our exceptional collection, which is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, worldwide. The Cyclades is a complex of 33 main islands in the center of the Aegean Sea. Ancient geographers named them Cyclades because they spread as a cycle around the holy island of Delos. Delos, right here next to Mykonos, was the greatest cult center in Greece because, according to the myth, god Apollo was born there. The Cycladic communities of the 3rd millennium BC, in which we are interested, were composed of seafaring islanders. Their life depended on trading of high-quality raw materials like obsidian, as well as living from livestock. The Cycladic civilization lasted for more than 1,000 years and suddenly disappeared around 2000 BC. The reasons were many. Their life was difficult on an island, especially in the winter, with piracies and invasions. And once they invented the sailing ship, probably moved into coastal settlements for a safer and more comfortable life. Unfortunately, the Cyclades were the most looted area in our country, especially during the decades of 50s and 60s. Because of that fact, archaeologists today still have difficulties to decipher the origin and the real content of Cycladic culture. Here, you can see the looted area on one of the most important sites of the 3rd millennium BC on Keros Island, here and right here, this area. Keep this name in mind, Keros, because it is of great importance and we will refer to it later. And here you can have an idea of how an official excavation run by archaeologists looks like. It is totally different, because when we excavate a site, we are interested in the artifacts, of course. However, the archaeological context in which the artifacts are found is also necessary for conclusions and interpretations about the site and the whole era that we study. After 1985, when the Greek Ministry of Culture started systematic excavations on the islands, we finally managed to study and publish material and have safe conclusions about this civilization. The early Cycladic civilization coincides with the early Bronze Age in Greece, which is 3200 until 2200 BC. Which is named this way because at that time, metal objects and metalworking appeared systematically and extensively. On the Cyclades, we do have traces of earlier inhabitation, much earlier than the Cycladic culture. As we don't have any architectural remains of that time, our only witnesses are tools. Tools made of obsidian. Obsidian is a volcanic rock, I could say a volcanic glass, and we meet it only on the island of Milos. It is very hard and very sharp, and through percussion they made these blades. They are like the razors that we use today. Particularly pointy obsidian tools were also used in the process of carving the marble figurines. It seems that obsidian was a kind of barter for these people because archaeologists have found such tools in many places far away from Cyclades, such as Asia Minor, Crete. Even in Caucasus, we meet the Minoan obsidian. Well, the daily activities on the islands were agriculture, fishing, and hunting. And suddenly, around 3500 BC, metals appeared and the development of metallurgy started. It seems that this was the greatest achievement of these people during that period, which led these island communities into economic growth, sailing, and commercial activities. So in 2800 BC, excellent bronze works appeared, like daggers, like this one here in our showcase, chisels, of course, for stone carving, tweezers, and axes. At the same time, they used pottery, vessels made of clay, for their daily needs. You can see that even they are entirely handmade, I mean without the potter's wheel, because the potter's wheel was imported in the Aegean world around 2200 BC, and this pottery here dates to 3000 BC. They are so symmetrical, can be described as works of art, and they are decorated with incised parallel lines. Particularly, these cylindrical vessels were containers for jewels, such as these necklaces right here, made of stones or shells. We cannot overlook the most mysterious objects of the early Cycladic pottery, the frying pans, like these two vessels here in the showcase, here on your right. They owe their conventional name to their characteristic shape, of course, and not to their use, which remains a kind of enigma. It is a shallow vessel with a forked handle. Their outside surface has incised or impressed decoration with motifs related to the sea and the landscape of Cyclades, like stars or suns. never-ending spirals, which are probably the representation of the waves. And this is an exceptional example of that kind of decoration. Or boats and fish. Frying pans have some of the greatest early depictions of seacraft in Europe and inform us how the ships of the early Bronze Age looked like. They are long boats with a bow and a fish on it, and oars, of course. Curiously, we meet them in graves, and usually in female graves. The interpretations proposed for their function are many, but I think that only two of them have strong arguments. Some archaeologists suggested that they could be mirrors because when you fill them with water, they reflect perfectly because the clay is very well polished, so they could see the reflection of their faces inside. But frying pans could also work as a navigation instrument, like an early astrolabe. The word astrolabe comes from the ancient Greek words astron, which means a star, and the verb lambano, which means I catch, meaning a star catcher. We know that Aegean mariners preferred to sail long distances by night because it's cooler and safer from piracies. In fact, a reflected image can be used to measure an object's angle of inclination. For this reason, frying pan could work as an astrolabe. But the greatest art that these early islanders developed was marble sculpture. In that showcase of Museum of Cycladic Art, you can see different objects, all of them carved on white marble, like plates here and other vessels or figures. It is obvious that these sculptors were very, very creative. Instead of written words, 5,000 years ago, humans and birds and animals sprang into being by skillful hands to carve the beauty of a hard but wonderful life. Imaginative shapes carved on excellent quality of colored marble. These kind of cups here, right here on your left with the stems were probably for wine. And the bowls here, the open vessels as we call them, were intended for water or milk. I chose this picture to show you the high level of Cycladic marble carving during the 3rd millennium BC. Look at the walls of this cup here on your left, are so thin and so fine that the marble appears translucent, attesting, of course, the skills of the Cycladic sculptor. Well, this is a masterpiece of Cycladic art housed in Cycladic Museum in Athens called the Dove Vase. It is a disc-shaped marble plate, very big and very heavy. The vase is shallow, and in the internal diameter, a row of 16 doves is carved. The whole plate and the doves are made from one single piece of marble. The size, but also the birds exactly across the diameter, exclude any practical function. No one can eat in such a plate. It belongs to a rare category of vessels known only from Keros Island, and it may have been used for ritual purposes, for ritual offerings. I would like to mention that the doves were worshipped also in Mesopotamia already from the 4th millennium BC. The dove was the symbol of goddess Ishtar, and many years later of our Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. They are very friendly and they live in the sky. So a good suggestion is that probably these people used to feed the doves cereals with this kind of vessels during ritual offerings. This is the backside of the dove vase. You can see clearly how it has been restored. I think this is a wonderful picture, reminds a solar eclipse. But the most elegant and characteristic creation of Cycladic art is marble figurine. Excellent quality of white marble, there's plenty of it on our islands, gave birth to the most typical works of Cycladic culture. Clear and abstract forms, with this exciting simplicity, have influenced deeply all the artists of the 20th century, like Brancusi, Henry Moore, Modigliani, Pablo Picasso, and many, many others. They proved to us that minimum includes the major. In the earliest phase of Cycladic culture, from 3200 until 2800 BC, the figurines are very schematic. Sometimes they are like pebbles, like this one here, but I can assure you that it is not a pebble. It represents a human form. The most common type of this schematic representation of human body is the violin-shaped figurine, as we call them, because I think the reason is obvious. They are exactly like a violin or guitars. This projection here is the neck and the head, and the four outgrowths, the hands and the legs. Sometimes anatomical features appeared incised, like this one here, the third one, these incised lines depicting the belly and the pubic triangle. An exceptional example is this violin-shaped figurine. As you can see, it has two holes because it was broken in antiquity, but it was very, very important for these people. They could not discard it, and they tried to repair it by connecting the two pieces with a rope probably made of leather. Until 2700 BC, and before the flourishing period began, several types of figurines appeared, sometimes very naturalistic, like this head of plastira type figurine, as we call it. All the names that characterize the types arise from the sites in which these figurines first discovered or appeared most. So it is so old, 5,000 years old, and at the same time, it looks so modern. The ears, the nose, and the mouth are given in relief. The mouth is formed with very fleshy lips. That head displays refined and somewhat, I think, it has personal characteristics. The type that prevailed for more than 500 years, from 2700 BC until 2200 BC, is the folded arm figurine, as it is called. They represent a nude female form with the arms under the breast, slightly flexed knees, and a barely uplifted head. Emphasis is given on very few anatomical details. Only the nose and the breast are given in relief. All the other features are incised, like the fingers or the pubic area. The folded arm figurines are also called canonical type. They are very thin and they have only 2 dimensions. That is why we also call them very often plank-shaped. The backside, as you can see, is slightly sculpted. We can observe only one line representing the spine. Now, we find them mainly in graves, in cemeteries, but in settlements too. So their function may have been more complex and varied, and I will give further explanation immediately. Very often, but not always, they have a swollen belly, that means pregnancy, or one or more incised lines on it, indicating the folds of flesh of postpartum wrinkles. It makes sense to suggest that early Cycladic figurines are the representation of fertility of the Great Mother. According to other theories, they are considered as votaries or votives to a deity. Some archaeologists also suggested that they could be a representation of the deceased person because of their presence in graves or even guides for the souls in the underworld. But whatever they represent, we must imagine these objects as the greatest religious symbols of the early Cycladic societies, something that carries an important symbolic meaning. Think what we do with our holy symbols. We worship them in our houses or cemeteries, our temples or churches. I think that we will never be able to understand the real meaning of the figurines. The absence of writing is a serious problem, but one thing is certain. Cycladic figurines testify a great art, which is anthropocentric. We must consider them as great works of art and not only as archaeological findings attesting an ancient civilization. Well, it is probably obvious that they cannot stand because their feet, as you can see, are not horizontal. It seems that they wanted them reclining. Moreover, in recent excavations, we find them in situ laying on their back above the head of the deceased. Here you can see a grave excavated in 2004 in Chalandriani on Syros Island. Chalandriani is the largest early Cycladic cemetery with more than 600 graves. And you can see the Cycladic figurine as it was found in situ above the head of the deceased person. Although today they appeal to the modern viewer for their almost translucent whiteness, their creators loved to color them. It is difficult to observe the traces of the colors without a microscope or special lights, with few exceptions. It seems that ancient islanders used pigments. Mineral pigments, they found them in the ground. For example, dark blue right here from azurite, which is carbonate copper, or red from hematite, which is an oxide of iron, and other minerals. They pulverized the mineral colors with tools like these pestles, and they mixed this powder with a binding material such as oil or egg to create the liquid color. They used to paint all the anatomical features of the face, like eyes, brows, hair, and mouth, or pointed marks on the face and ornaments. We are not able to say if this has to do with burial rituals or with the social status of the owner, or both. And as I said, we cannot see the traces of the paintings. So here you can have an idea of how the figurines looked like during the 3rd millennium BC. Here, this is an amazing exhibit, a spouted ball, in which the reddy color was found in situ, dark blue from azurite mineral. Thankfully, we had the so-called paint ghosts because they made us suspect the existence of the painted surfaces. You can see that the eyes and the brows are given in low relief. Another one here, we can observe here also the hair and the mouth. The eyes and the brows are also seen to be given in low relief, but actually they are not. In fact, these are the areas on which the color protected the marble from erosion after so many years in the ground. Now, the process of carving a figurine is easier than we probably think. On a piece of marble, they incised the outlines with a pointy obsidian tool, then removed all the unnecessary pieces of marble, and then the carving started with small chisels. The final abrasion was made with emery. Emery, right here, is a rock that polishes marble in a very gently way without destroying it. And there is plenty of it on Cyclades, especially on the island of Naxos. There is a whole mountain of emery. At the end of the process, the obsidian tool incised the rest anatomical details like the fingers and pubic triangle. Now, only the 5% of the figurines so far are male figurines, but all of them have 3 dimensions because they are in action. There is no indication of sex, but the breasts are not shown. They are usually musicians like these two here from our National Museum. On the left, that form is playing double flute, and the other one is the famous harpist seated on a throne with elaborate backrest. A well-known male figurine is the cupbearer housed in Cycladic Museum in Athens. It belongs to a rare type of male figures, and it is the only complete example of that category. The figurine sits on a stool which is carved on the same piece of marble. The right arm raises a small cup, probably filled with wine. It seems like he's saying cheers. The extended arm without any support is rare and very, very difficult in sculpture generally. And keep in mind that the breakage right here was examined and seems to be crushed in a way which indicates that the arm was broken while the figurine was in the ground during the millennia and not during the period of its use. It is unbelievable how these people could create such an artifact. It is clear now, I think, that early Cycladic sculptors managed to capture the 3rd dimension. The absence of writing does not allow to understand the reason that female figures have only 2 dimensions, but it's clear that they chose to follow that plank-shaped form for their high importance symbol. There are also compositions of 2 or 3 figures, which are conventionally called acrobats. Very interesting is this fragment right here in the middle. Probably a female figure holds a child in her arms. And on the right, a small figurine stands on the head of a bigger one. This is a very well preserved composition of 2 figurines holding a smaller one. A hypothesis about them is that all the forms in action are the servants of the great goddess of fertility, or the interactive, I could say, representation of a local religious festival that these islanders used to organize in her honor. In Greece, we still organize such festivals to honor our saints. And here you can see them all together, dancing, playing music, and drinking wine. Well, This is not a figurine, of course. It is a monumental sculpture, the second largest ever found, 1 meter and 40 centimeters height. There are very few large-scale sculptures, and it has been suggested that these were made for cult use in sanctuaries, although there are not any architectural remains of such buildings. Probably they had a larger function, a kind of outdoor worship in an area that was set aside as a communal place of special significance. If you could stand in front of this sculpture, you would realize that it makes its presence felt through this amazing simplicity, purity of the material, and clear outlines. It is so old, 5,000 years old, but yet so modern. We would easily say that it was sculpted by Brancusi. During the 20th century, all the modern artists were looking exactly for these features: abstraction, direct carving, and the minimal. And suddenly, the Cycladic miracle appeared. These island communities of the 3rd millennium BC could produce works of art of such a dazzling simplicity. They attract the modern eye, which responds directly to them with a real pleasure. But this is only the half part of Cycladic miracle. The early Cycladic civilization was the only anthropocentric culture. Think ancient Egyptians, for example. The sculptures of their gods were huge, with heads of wild animals or monsters. It seems that they wanted to frighten people and not to bring peacefulness in their lives. On Cyclades existed the only civilization that placed the man in the center of the universe. Indeed, it could be said that in the Aegean of the 3rd millennium, man was deified, or Godhead was humanized. Man was the measure for all things. Well, it seems that these proto-Greeks started on that long process of humanism. Let's look at Keros now. Keros is right here between Amorgos and Kuphonysia. Used to be the most enigmatic side of the whole Bronze Age of Greece. It is a very small island, and it became well known in 1960 after a series of extensive illicit excavations on a special deposit on a site called Kavos. These lootings resulted in the illegal exporting of a large number of early Cycladic artifacts. The hoard, as this group of artifacts is called, is said to have included more than 350 objects. This is a part of the hoard right here. Mrs. Wulandris, the foundress of Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens, managed to repatriate and host in Museum of Cycladic Art 81 of these artifacts. You can see them displayed here in Cycladic Museum, these 4 showcases. Curiously, the hoard comprised only fragments of marble figurines and marble vessels. It was a kind of puzzle, as none of them matched with another. And even 2 pieces matched, they simply created a bigger fragment. When this case came to light, archaeologists couldn't understand what really happened and why everything was broken. Did the looters cause this destruction? This does not make any sense because they always need complete antiquities in order to sell them. You can understand now how difficult it is to explain or have correct interpretations of an ancient site when everything has been removed violently from the archaeological context. Well, all the fragments were scientifically examined at the Cycladic Museum, and we realized then that they were broken in antiquity. It was quite clear because all the breakages were consistently eroded and uncrushed. In 2006, Professor Colin Renfrew, specialized in early Cycladic civilization, excavated a similar special deposit on Keros, this time unlooted, full of the same material, meaning fragments. This cycle here on your left is the looted special deposit north, as it is called, and here is the special deposit south, excavated by Lord Colin Renfrew. It is completely clear now that these objects were deliberately broken during the 3rd millennium BC, probably for ritual purposes. It seems that these early islanders had to break a figurine on their own island and then travel to Keros and deposit the fragment on the earliest marine sanctuary of the world. It was a primary deposition unrelated to funerary activities, and we could say it was a kind of oblation. Here you can see two joined of fragments, the one from the hoard and the other from the systematic excavations on Keros. They joined together after 5,000 years. It sounds incredible, but we are sure that many fragments of figurines found on different islands of Cyclades have their match in the special deposits of Kavos. As you can imagine, that is a huge and difficult project to be done, but I think the Keros project will take care about it very soon. This islet here is Dhaskalio, and during the 3rd millennium BC was a cape of Keros. Here, this coast is Keros. This means that the two islands were connected during the 3rd millennium because the level of the sea was 4 meters lower. On Dhaskalio, a settlement came to light of non-domestic character and carefully planned. Artificial terraces arranged in 6 levels were created on this difficult morphology. This is a picture of Dhaskalio. That settlement, which is the biggest of the 3rd millennium in the Aegean area, was originally created to cover the needs of the world's earliest marine sanctuary. Dhaskalio became the greatest center of metallurgy and the heart of many different networks between the islands, like pottery, metalworking, and of course, a center of a congregation. But above all, Dhaskalio was the place where Cycladic identity was born, and this is very important. That site had all the features which very shortly after this period will come to be seen as aspects of urbanism, meaning Minoan Crete and then the Mycenaeans, which were clearly urban communities. These features are coming together and present a new way of life. As I said, the most important of these characteristics is the construction of Cycladic identity, which was anchored on Keros. People were gathering probably every 2 or 3 or 4 years for ritual purposes, trying to confirm their identity as members of that Cycladic community. Here, this is the main entrance of Dhaskalio. That monumental staircase came to light. It is completely made of white marble. Well, we are so lucky to be members of the family of Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens, and proud, of course. Last summer, we did the impossible. We had the unique opportunity, together with our friends, of course, who support us continuously all these years to visit the archaeological site of Keros Dhaskalio complex, which is not and will never be accessible to the public. And the co-director of Keros project, Dr. Michael Boyd, was our guide. We were so lucky. Indeed, it was a difficult project because of the morphology of the site, but believe me, the experience was amazing on this piece of land in the middle of Aegean Sea. And our last figurine is the most elegant ever found, I think. We can admire undulating outlines, the slenderness of the form, and of course, the perfect proportions. It belongs to the folded arm type. This figurine is conventionally called Modigliani by the staff of Cycladic Museum on account of its similarities to Modigliani's sculptures and especially to some portraits of Jeanne Hébuterne, who was his model and later his wife. I think that this form right here in the middle of these portraits is the proof that minimum includes the major. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I hope that the real meaning and the importance of Cycladic civilization were clear. A short video of the Museum of Cycladic Art is about to follow, and in the meantime, you'll be able to submit your questions in the chat box. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for this truly exceptional lecture. I think if I could get on a flight right now, I know where I would be going if the museum were open, but failing in that, I would be on the first boat to try and climb up Dhaskalio and look at the site. You've given us so much to think about. I just want to say not only was your lecture just beautifully delivered, but I think we really have a wonderful idea of what the inside of the museum looks like, what to look for when we're there, and just a new appreciation of the extraordinary beauty of Cycladic art. So in the meantime, if everybody can offer virtual or real applause, because this was such a treat. and helped us to just get out of our heads for a day and think about something, a much brighter and better place in the past. So thank you from all of us.